The Hisense E7NQ Pro is a great mid-range TV, especially for gamers and for people who have never had a good modern TV before. But after spending the majority of a year with it day in and day out, I do have a couple of things I feel like I need to address. Let's talk about it. The E7NQ Pro from Hisense is a mid-range TV which packs a set of features that are specifically targeted at gamers, while still being an overall good value proposition for most people looking for a new TV. It came out in October 2024, and I picked it up right after Christmas, and me and my family have been living with it ever since. Now, I do want to clarify here that this video is not a review of the E7NQ Pro. Instead, it's more of a follow-up on what I think after living with it and using it every single day for almost a year. I did do a full review on it earlier this year, which you can check out right here on my channel for a more in-depth look at this TV. In this video, I'm just going to go over what I think has held up after all this time and what hasn't. And I'll try to be quick about it. Let's start with the stuff that hasn't quite lived up to my initial expectations. The biggest disappointment for me by far has been the brightness, or lack of it. Now, don't get me wrong, this is still plenty bright for most situations. In my review video, I actually mentioned that it held up to the point where even nighttime scenes were clearly visible in direct sunlight, even at 50% brightness, but I do have to add the caveat that this was based on my initial testing, which took place in the winter, in Denmark. Which, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the sun barely makes a cameo appearance every few days or so during winter. It's basically a vampire's wet dream, except for the part where they freeze to death, or undead. Anyway, all that is to say that now where I've lived with this TV in the summertime and experienced how it handles extreme sunlight, it does struggle just a bit at times, especially in low light scenes or games. It's not a constant issue or something that'll ruin the viewing or gaming experience for you entirely, but if you do live in a place that gets lots of light during the daytime, you may want to consider either putting up some shades or cranking up the brightness, although the latter option will cause the image to look very washed out and dull. The other complaint I have is a minor one, which is bugs and glitches. I've experienced a few glitches here and there, such as the TV turning itself off once or twice, as well as the occasional slowdown where the TV becomes a bit laggy and unresponsive, though this mostly happens when watching YouTube with closed captions. The longer the video is, the laggier it gets, but the problem is easily remedied by just turning the captions off for a few seconds, or just not using captions when watching YouTube. I've also gotten a weird bug where YouTube would open up and immediately start playing the same video over and over, but I figured out that clearing the cache on the TV fixes that issue instantly. Other than that, I really don't have anything bad to say about the E7NQ Pro at all. In fact, pretty much every other thing I can think of has held up remarkably well even all this time later. It is super responsive, especially when playing games, and the high refresh rate coupled with the inclusion of VRR means you can play console games at a higher resolution than you otherwise could. In fact, I recently played through Spider-Man 2 with the quality set to fidelity while still enjoying roughly 60 FPS, which you would otherwise only be able to reach if playing in performance mode, meaning I get to enjoy all the ray tracing glory and high frame rate at the same time, which is basically the whole selling point of the PS5 Pro without me having to shell out money to upgrade my console. That in itself is worth the price of admission, if you ask me, at least if you're a big gamer, and the library of games with built-in VRR support and the ability to reach higher frame rates from 120Hz TVs or higher is only going to keep increasing with time. For example, God of War Ragnarok, which I'm currently replaying, also has a mode which utilizes the high frame rate of your TV to give you a higher FPS, meaning I get to play this at a buttery smooth 90 plus FPS, which is just amazing, honestly. Speaking of other things that have held up, other than the few minor glitches I've experienced, this thing has not flaked out on me in any major way whatsoever, even after all this time. And I know technically a year isn't that long, especially for a mid-range TV, but do keep in mind that between myself, my wife, and my daughter, this thing is easily on 10 hours a day every single day. And yet, there's no performance issues, no stuttering, no issues with the image quality or dead pixels. It just works. So the question is, should you still buy this even in late 2025 or 2026? And well, I'd say it depends on a couple of things. First of all, it is a year old as of me making this video, and it might be even older by the time you watch this. So of course, there are even newer models out there on the market that can do more than this can. But on the other hand, that means you might be able to find this at a pretty decent price, in which case I think it's definitely worth it. However, do also keep in mind that this TV is aimed squarely at gamers first and foremost. That doesn't mean you can't get any enjoyment out of it even if you don't own a gaming console, but the feature set of the E7NQ Pro is absolutely tailored more so towards squeezing extra frames out of your games rather than giving you a cinematic or color accurate look. Now, movies and shows do look absolutely fine on this thing, especially once you turn off motion smoothing, but it won't give you the inky blacks of an OLED or the super high brightness of a more expensive mini LED. Speaking of which, I did mention that the brightness does leave a bit to be desired, especially when you're watching or playing something a bit dark while the sun is shining directly on your TV, but outside of those specific cases, this TV more than holds its own and is super easy to watch at any time without any issues. So if all that sounds good to you and you find this thing at a decent discount, then the E7NQ Pro is still worth it. That's it for this video. Give it a like if you made it this far and consider subscribing if you want to see more honest tech reviews. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.